Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Veronica Motley, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Sylvania Schools Town Hall meeting this evening. Tonight, we have members of our central office team, as well as two of our board members and our SEA president joining us so that we can address some questions that were on your minds that you submitted, not only from our teachers, but from our community and also some parents as well. So it's our pleasure to be here tonight. I will tell you we will begin this evening with a presentation from two of our directors from the board office. We have Ms. Karen Roby and Mr. Alex Clarkson, who is going to present on our summer program that we are offering here in Sylvania Schools. So without further ado, Alex, Karen, thank you for being here tonight, and we look forward to learning more about the extended learning opportunities for our students here in Sylvania Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Motley, and thanks everybody for having us here tonight. We'd like to give you a little bit of perspective on something that we've been planning for a couple months now, which is an effort to embrace a large number of our students and help them cope with learning loss that has been experienced during the pandemic. We understand, of course, as educators, that every student in the pandemic has experienced some sort of learning loss and challenge in pursuing their teaching and learning studies. However, we are equipping ourselves and resourcing ourselves to address some of the most at-risk students in that population. And tonight we'd like to talk to you a little bit about the details of the plan that we have developing and moving forward right now. To give you a little bit of background, once the semester ended and we started looking to the summer, which we always do when we're hitting around January, we decided that we needed a program that would address learning loss. We have a few summer school programs in place. We have a credit recovery program, we have a summer gym program, special ed programs, and English learner programs, but we decided we wanted something a bit more expansive. And we have something that's a bit more expansive in the works right now. This plan is under development and has been for a couple of months, and we'll talk to you a little bit about it tonight. I'll turn the podium over to Karen Roby, who will talk a little bit about the purpose of tonight's program.
Good evening. As you can see, our summer swing program is a direct response to the pandemic, and we had three focus areas for our purpose. One is to support, like Alex said, our most at-risk students. We also are proud to have an environment where we're going to be able to have small groups for our summer learning, as well as this entire program is just going to help with the transition either into the next grade level, the next class, and actually back to what we hope for is back to normal.
One of the most crucial questions we embraced when moving into this, and one that we have dealt with for quite a while, is which students will be involved. We have the ability to support, and we are intending to support, about 22% of our overall student population, and that is in grades K through 11. So that, by the way, is the most expansive summer program that Sylvania Schools has ever mounted, and that's quite a lot of students. So we had to decide how exactly we would determine which students would be invited to this summer program. So we have a framework in place that we've executed. We are really close to invitations to the summer program. So I'd like to describe exactly how these decisions were made. First, we did a central administration-led data screen. What we did was we took a look at the objective assessment data that we have in students from grades K all the way up through 11. And that assessment data includes a wide range. We haven't had state testing regularly in a while, except for the fall with third grade, so we didn't have much state testing data to rely upon for our data screen. We used STAR data, DRAs, KRAs. We also used RIMP status and certain other special population status as a data screen to establish the first line of eligibility. So after we did that, we had a large group of students that we had identified as at risk based upon their data scores both in growth and proficiency over the last year and some other objective assessment factors. Once we had that large group, we put that large group over in front of their individual teachers, the teachers that see them every day in the classroom. And we asked those teachers to prioritize those students based upon who they thought, from day-to-day experience, needed this program the most. From first that data screen and then the teacher recommendations, we've developed a list of students that we are inviting and a list of standby students once we have invitations that are rejected. So like I said, we have seats for about 22% of our overall population, and we will extend the invitation to those students. And those students and their families can accept that invitation or reject that invitation. We will be serving this program for 2 sessions over the summer. First one will be in June. The next one will be in July after the July 4th holiday. So there will be a diversity of different opportunities based upon grade level. Our K through 5 will be a half-day program. Our 6 through 11 will be programs based upon a rotating period schedule, and students will take certain classes and not take certain others. We're going to give all of these details in the next coming days as well as coming weeks. Tomorrow, we are starting the invitation process. And that invitation process will involve us contacting parents and letting them know that their child has been selected to be invited to the summer program, the summer swing. If they accept that invitation, we will go further with details on scheduling and everything else. Once we've gotten deeper into the program, we will inform all members of the community about the program, what it offers, what we're doing here in Sylvania schools to attend to our most at-risk population. And Karen will expand a little bit about some of what we're doing.
Our summer swing program will also include all the special services that students normally receive. So those are English language learners, our special needs students, as well as providing social emotional supports on hand, as well as embedded in some of the curriculum, especially at the elementary.
One challenge that we face at the secondary level, especially in high school, is credit loss. So learning loss and credit loss are related, but slightly different things. So at the 9-12 level, students must accumulate credits in order to graduate, and we've seen higher than normal failure rates during the pandemic. We want to support these students in every way that we can to make sure that they can maintain track to graduation. Over this last semester, we've provided credit recovery options for free to a wide number of students, much larger than we've ever offered it before. And we have counselors, teachers, other support personnel working with those students at Southview and Northview right now to make sure that they can recover those credits through credit recovery means that we have. Usually during summer school, students can recover credits in the same sort of digital platform. This time, what we're offering is a conjunction between the summer swing and the traditional summer school. If a student has failed a course at the 9-12 level, let's say they failed geometry, then they can enroll in summer school, which is a fee-based service for Sylvania schools. They would pay the fee for geometry, and being invited to summer swing, they would also enroll in that. If they complete summer swing for geometry, and they complete the geometry modules for credit recovery, by the end of that term, by the end of the summer, they will receive a full refund for all costs. So we're trying to provide some incentive and lower the costs for credit recovery for students and integrate it with face-to-face instruction in the actual content area. Rather than simply completing digital models, those students will be in classrooms with actual teachers, in this case a geometry teacher, as well as going through that credit recovery.
Next, we're each going to take a turn describing a day in the life of what our summer swing program would be like. So at the elementary, we would start off with like a morning meeting, whole group session to get the day started. We would then focus on an English language arts block, provide a little outside time, a little break, and then follow that with a math-focused instructional block of time. And as I said earlier, our social emotional learning and needs, that type of curriculum will also be embedded into our program. And then we'll have a little break, and then that type of session will be repeated for the afternoon.
For 6 through 11, we modeled our original schedule based upon a traditional 6 through 12 schedule, period by period schedule. And students will be invited to different classes. Unlike K-5, where a student will just be invited to a grade level and participate in half a day, a student at our level might be invited to algebra or English 11 or reading grade 6. And so they might take this class and this class. They might be scheduled for this period and this period. So that's a little bit disjointed. And we wanted to make sure that in this program we didn't just provide academic supports, but as Karen mentioned a couple times, we do want to provide a sense of belonging, of contact and engagement with our students. We don't want this to be a disconnected experience, and that's why we are putting students in front of and with actual live teachers, rather than simply serving them some kind of digital curriculum which will be disconnected. And that's why the day at 611 will also be divided into two halves. The idea being if a student is taking 2 classes, we will try to schedule that student in the morning so they can take advantage of a transportation route in the middle of the day and not have to spend their entire day in the building if they don't have to. So that morning we'll start with a community circle, almost like a morning meeting at K-5. However, of course, this will be led by secondary teachers with secondary students. Then there will be a couple of classes, a break with lunch and a transition for transportation, and then that will repeat in the afternoon with another community circle. The community circle will be an opportunity for students to feel that engagement with each other, because a big part of what we're looking at is academic transition into the next grade, but also just getting students back on track for being with their peers in a classroom, completing homework, working with teachers, working in small groups on academic activities. And that kind of social emotional connection is very important. So our structure and that schedule and the day in the life will try to do that for our students at 611. And since this is the first time board members have really heard any sort of detailed presentation, we'd be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
You have any questions, Greg?
No, I'm good.
Good.
I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the time.
Transition and introduce Chris. Thank you so much again, Alex and Karen. We appreciate that helpful and valuable information. And next, coming to the podium, we have Chris Peterson, who has been so kind to work with us again this evening as she works to facilitate our town hall. So thank you, Chris, on behalf of our school district and our school board, and of course myself, thank you for being willing to support us tonight as you facilitate this discussion.
It's my pleasure, and the questions are coming from you. So these are not my questions. These are questions that were submitted by you. This is an effort by the school board, the school administration, the teachers, to be very transparent about what's happening. I know there have been so many changes. Probably seems a bit overwhelming. We had a pretty successful visit about a month and a half ago with all of you, and got to as many questions as we possibly could in a little over an hour there. We're going to try to do the same thing. We're going to get to as many questions as we can that have been submitted previously. We're going to try to get through those tonight, all of them, including a few of the ones that we didn't get to last time. So these are actually questions that you all want answered. And I'm going to start with, there's nothing like just starting. First, and let me just say, it's nice to see everyone's faces. Last time, if you joined us, you will remember that we were all masked up, and that's because that was the protocol at the time. Everyone here has been vaccinated fully, and so we are following the new protocols of being able to gather together still with a little social distancing within a pod of people who have been fully vaccinated, and that's what we have here. So it's really nice to see actual faces. We also got a little feedback that it was hard to hear through the masks last time, so hopefully that won't be an issue either. But just to remind my friends that are sitting up here with microphones in front of them, don't be afraid to put your mouth right up to it either, because sometimes it doesn't pick you up from far away. So you might want to move them just a little bit closer as we answer. Our first question, we're going to jump right into it. This one is to Veronica. You visited and blocked off 2 hours to observe preschool after the request from the last town hall meeting, and you only stayed for half an hour. You didn't consult or check back in with the teachers after your observation, and you only saw snack time, which is the equivalent of observing kindergarten during lunch. Do you plan to take time to address preschool's safety concerns?
Absolutely. And thank you again, Chris, for being willing to facilitate this meeting tonight. Absolutely. And I will say it wasn't just myself who went over and visited with our preschool educators. It was folks from our central office team, Mr. Ziroff, Ms. Gave. Actually, both of us, all three of us, went and visited our preschool classrooms. And quite frankly, we have been continuing our efforts to help support and address the needs of our preschool teachers. It's been a challenging year, more specifically with staffing. In some cases, we have had paraprofessionals who have started with our district, changed to another position, and what have you. We've had just difficulty in securing more staff. And I think it's important that we recognize that it's not like a lack of effort. Many school districts in the area and across the state have struggled to secure paraprofessionals, not unlike bus drivers and nutrition staff as well. It is a challenge, but by no means does it minimize or take down or lower the priority for our central office staff and our building administrators. Principals have expressed serious concern about the preschool needs, and we continue to explore those options. In fact, I have to say, Rose, our director of special education, has taken it upon herself on some occasions to actually volunteer her time when we have not had coverage in a classroom and really leave her office, leave her work behind so that she can not only support our children but also our preschool educators. And we're going to continue to beat the bushes. So for those of you who may be watching tonight at home or watching this later, if you are interested in working with some of our youngest Sylvanians, please come over to the board office. You can also go on our website and click on an online application. We are hiring and we need your help.
All right, so the job offers out there. They do need help. Great opportunity for some folks out there. Do you have a timeline, Veronica, where you're going to feel like things should be back in place within the preschool?
I am hopeful that as soon as we can get more support, yes. I would like sooner than later, honestly, because we want our teachers, our educators to have the supports they need to do the very best job they can do. We're going to continue to beat the bushes for paraprofessionals and, again, other positions here in the district. We would like to say we would have people in place next week, but as soon as possible. And listen, if I have to go over there and volunteer, I'll do that too.
All right, so keep it in mind if you know folks looking for work or maybe volunteer hours, that there might be an opportunity for them there. Veronica, this question is also for you. Has the district considered updating the personal technology for teachers? For example, potentially providing an iPad for each staff member to utilize in the classroom in place of the Chromebook, because Chromebooks are very limited.
Well, I will say, to be candid, we are a Dell Chromebook district, and we have committed to that program and that, or I should say really that type of technology. It is my understanding that we have a 5-year rotation in regards to how we replace Chromebooks or teacher technology for them to use, their personal technology. So we do have a 5-year rotation. I will tell you, I like iPads too. I live in both worlds. I have a foot in a Dell house and I have a foot on an iPad. So I have two different types of devices, and I understand how they both do great things. I will say, though, for the Chromebooks, especially in an educational environment, and when you have 7,700 students that you're potentially supplying Chromebooks for, there is some expense related to maintaining the Chromebooks, fixing the Chromebooks, and supporting that type of technology. And I will tell you, they have a market on how to make that feasible for educational entities and organizations and schools. I certainly understand they do have some drawbacks. But I will tell you that is a platform that we are committed to. iPads are quite expensive, and if you've had an iPhone and you've dropped it, you know, it's pretty expensive to get the screen replaced and pretty inconvenient. So we have to stay with some tools that are student-friendly and that will also integrate with a number of educational programs and their software.
All right, our next question. Tim, I'm going to give this one to you, if you don't mind. For the IEP children, what is the plan to assist them in the areas in which the online model that was used did not allow for them to maximize their learning items needed? Not that teachers did not do well, for they did. It's just that the in-person items are so key for these kids, especially ones transferring from one school to the next.
Yeah, thanks for the question, and thanks for the person who asked it as well, recognizing the work that all of our teachers, but specifically when in this question, our intervention specialists during that remote learning time. I know working with our Disability Services Department and intervention specialists, they have kept documentation on the minutes that students and IEPs were given access to. In order to be compliant by law, they have to fulfill those minutes. And I guess to that parent or whoever asked that question, I believe it may have been a parent, if they feel those minutes weren't fulfilled from a compliance perspective, please reach out to their case manager, and we will work on getting those compensatory minutes updated for those students.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, the relationship between the superintendent and teachers has not been a strong one, and honestly, the worst that I've seen in Sylvania. What has the superintendent done from her end to help improve these relationships and the overall morale of Sylvania schools? So, Dr. Motley, I'll let you answer this question from your perspective, how you're developing relationships, and then maybe Greg or Julie want to chime in after that.
Great, thank you. You know, this question resonated with me on a personal and professional level, because what it says to me is that we have a person who has a strong desire to make sure that we have healthy relationships within our district between our educators and myself. And I too share that same desire. So the question, although hard to hear, is important that I know, because that means that's a value that a community member or a parent submitted to us to address. So I will also say, not an excuse, but an explanation. It's difficult to start a new position in a new district, in a new city, under the pandemic. It was difficult when we had limitations of who could be in a room and having to wear a mask and being able to recognize people, being on 3 different types of learning plans, and quite frankly, starting a new position where I'm new to the community. I relocated. And before now, quite frankly, many of our previous superintendents were actually from Sylvania. So to a degree, I recognize I'm an outsider, but I'm not an outsider anymore. I'm happy to be here. I'm proud to be part of Sylvania and the Sylvania schools. And more importantly, although it started out as a challenge, I believe I've worked hard to make sure we strengthen our relationship. I've been in every building in the district on more than one occasion, in some cases more than 2, more than 3, more than 4. I've worked to really go in teachers' classrooms and spend time with teachers and spend time engaging with students. I actually experienced most recently an opportunity to go into teachers' lounges because I thought that would be a great way to try and reach out and integrate and have conversations with our teachers, and so they could get to know me and I could get to know them. Ironically, folks aren't congregating in the lounge as much as they used to. So I'm going to have to rethink my approach, but I think what it's so important to know is that I value a strong and close relationship with our educators and our families and our children. And I am dedicated to improving that relationship. And as the restraints disappear, I think it's going to get much easier to do. So for those out there who are listening, if you're an educator, please invite me to your classroom. I'd love to come. And don't be surprised if I just knock on the door or turn the door handle and walk right on in so I can just be a part of your classroom environment.
Awesome. Would either of our board members like to weigh in on that?
You want to?
Yeah. First of all, it's a great question. And it's definitely something that we all on the board have talked about with Dr. Motley, when she started. But, as Dr. Motley said, it's obviously it's been a challenging year all around. And then, her starting right in the middle of it was really difficult. Not only the, restrictions of not being around people, social distancing, all that kind of stuff, but just trying to make it through, trying to, get our plans together, figure out what we're going to do. So, I'm really, really confident that as the restrictions start to lift here a little bit and we kind of get back to a little bit of normalcy, I'm really confident that she's going to, foster those relationships. I know she really, really wants to. I know she has a plan to do it. So I'm happy that we're finally starting to hopefully move past COVID and get back to some normalcy. And I'm sure those relationships will be fostered here soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dan, do you have a comment that you'd like to make about the relationship? And are you seeing things get better as the schools have reopened and things are getting a little more normal?
Sure. I think to echo the sentiment about the obstacles that came towards the beginning of this year, and then that, having some of those barriers out of the way, I think there's really been a sincere effort on all of our parts to recognize the way that we do things here in Sylvania is as a family, that we work together, and that I really do believe something special that we have in Sylvania is year after year is the relationships that we create amongst ourselves. And I think that we recognize how important that is, and that it's not something that comes easy, that relationships can sometimes be messy, and but that we're working on those things, and we're committed to doing that. And I'm happy about the trajectory of things. I'm happy about the way things went. We've just gone through what can sometimes be a difficult time as we're starting our staffing process for next school year, and that can sometimes be, as you move staff around, a tricky piece. But I'm really pleased with the way that has gone over the last week or so, and I think it's a sign of good things to come.
Awesome. All right. Hope that answered that very difficult question. And Dr. Motley, I'll just say, it is hard. It's hard to hear critiques of ourselves and criticisms of ourselves and, things that maybe we need to work on and develop. So, for all of you, I just really appreciate you kind of, taking the questions and meeting them head on, because that's a difficult thing to hear, that maybe you're not meeting someone's expectation, and especially when you're a person that really strives to meet someone's expectation. So I appreciate that you all are willing to answer that, and appreciate all of you weighing in. This next question, the viewer says, was asked before and abruptly dismissed. So she's asking, or he's asking again. Other districts in our area allow students who play team sports to opt out of phys ed. We understand the importance of this class, but we're already getting the information through multiple coaches and teams. Please consider waiving the requirement so we can take advantage of the many other options like foreign language, business, fine arts, etc. What do we say about PE?
Yeah, I can answer that.
Okay, Tim.
I will say we have had that discussion in this district for a handful of years, just discussing the overall physical education waiver and being involved in interscholastic sports, and band is included in that based on the waivers that the ODE does provide. We really had some in-depth conversation about it about a year ago, because we technically do offer a PE waiver that gives students an opportunity to be involved in other electives with our summer phys ed program that is actually taught by our phys ed teachers during the summer. Actually, I checked today, keeping just updates because that registration period is open. We've got about 117 students right now registered for summer phys ed. And it's a tough call, because even though those waivers are granted by the ODE, is it fulfilling a well-rounded education that you are adhering to by having an actual classroom teacher teach that class to those students? I agree 100%. The physical fitness part is there for most of those sports if a student's involved in cross country or football or basketball or wrestling, but the overall well-rounded experience at this point as a district we don't feel is there. But with that being said, we are continuing to evaluate that, discuss that process on how we could potentially dive into it deeper moving forward.
I know my daughter was one that did take the summer gym for both of the credits that she needed for phys ed, so I know that that's a popular program with a lot of kids and families as well. Thank you. Next, Will you ever consider open enrollment with a cap with priority given to students with grandparents who live in the district? Other schools have recently done this. Is this a board question, Julie?
That's a board question, Chris. Thank you. The key word in that question is ever. So I'm not going to say never because it's always a possibility. But at this time, I think there's a question further down where it talks about some of our schools being overcrowded. We have pretty high enrollment as it is. So at this time, open enrollment outside of the district into the district is not on our radar.
All right. One of the issues that was raised during the last year because of COVID was air quality in our schools. Better ventilation is something that would help long-term with the health of our students and our staff. We have quite a few students and staff with asthma and recurring respiratory infections prior to COVID. Are there plans to improve the ventilation in our schools? And if yes, when? And if no, why not?
Thank you. This is a very good question. In fact, we had a parent who actually presented at a board meeting last fall in regards to presenting some options to the school board and our facilities director about the air quality in our buildings. And I think, quite frankly, we need to do a study on what that looks like. We need to evaluate the current air quality and then also look at options and resolutions to improve that air quality. We have buildings of various ages, and we need to make sure that we have the best ventilation possible. One of those things that we learned from COVID, quite frankly, I will say as the pandemic has rolled through over the course of the last year, there are some things that we've learned that we can improve upon, and this is one of them. We did have our director of facilities retire in February, and we have another gentleman, Wayne Kinsel, who will be joining us in July. And one of his first priorities is just that, to do an evaluation or conduct a study of the air quality and ventilation in our buildings. And I'm sure some of that work will also go through the facilities committee, which Mr. Feller serves on as well, as a discussion point and an item to address how to proceed to address concerns or areas that need improved, or of areas where we're doing okay and meeting standard or above standards. So we look forward to addressing that in the future.
Do you have any sense how long a study like that takes, and what kind of timeline people might expect to see some results?
I would say my understanding, if I recall correctly from Mr. Vacho before he left, it's relatively a short time frame. I would say 30 days for them to really go through each building, evaluate, because the rooms and the classrooms, especially when you're looking at a size of the building of Northview or Southview, there's a lot of classrooms. We have classrooms that don't have windows. We have classrooms that have windows, and making sure we do an analysis of those rooms appropriately. So I'm going to say approximately 30 days. Now, I will also say I'm not an expert on that, so don't hold me too closely
Sorry to put you
it.
on the spot
That's
there.
okay. No, I appreciate it, because that's probably what people are wondering. Like, so if it's going to be done in July, but how long is it going to take, and when are you going to respond? So it's legitimate, and I appreciate that. I just know that I'm very honest about my knowledge base, and I don't want to be misleading. So if it's not 30 days, we will communicate when we conduct the study and the timeline then when Wayne gets on board.
Blame it on Chris Peterson over here, because I'm the one that's putting everybody on the spot. Okay. Greg, here's the question about the aging school buildings. We have aging school buildings in Sylvania that are very crowded, like Northview. Does the district have a plan for evaluating replacing those buildings?
Yes, this is a great question, and this is one of the concerns that I had when I first ran a few years ago. So it's kind of right up my alley. But the answer is we're working on it. So one thing when I started, I really wanted to get the facilities committee kind of up and running again. I guess it was a committee that we've had in the past and kind of has hasn't been active for a while. So now that, again, with COVID and restrictions starting to lighten up, we've started the facilities committee again. We had our first meeting, I'll say maybe a month ago or so. So we're starting the process of so I'm a big data person. I want data. So I think there's a lot of data that we need to gather right now that we don't have or haven't had in the past. Building sizes, number of classrooms, capacities, those types of things. So on the facilities committee, like I say, right now we're just starting the process of gathering our data so that we can make data-driven, informed decisions in the future. So. The answer is we don't have anything right now, but we're working on it, and hopefully soon we will be able to put some plans together going forward.
All right. everything kind of took a pause for the last year, didn't it? Because we're redirecting resources to pandemic issues. Dan, this question I'm going to direct to you. How have the students and staff responded to returning to school? I know there was a lot of excitement and some trepidation as well going back, but how are our kids doing and how are our teachers and staff doing?
Yeah, appreciate you checking in on us. There were a lot of concerns about what is, the unknown. What's it going to be like? Are we going to see a lot of spread of COVID? Are we going to be doing a lot of quarantining? And I'm certain there have been some pieces of that going on, but I know generally it's been a fairly smooth process, I think, for both kids and for teachers. I almost think about it kind of like riding a bicycle. I mean, this is what we do. We do 5 days a week school in person with all our students. It's what we've been doing naturally. It's what our kids have been doing year in and year out. And so I think it's generally been going well. I think there's been a sense of relief from quite a few people to be able to get to the thing that is familiar to them, the thing that is routine. So generally, I would say for both students and for teachers, it's been good. It's been a lot more good than it has been challenging, and I think that the general sentiment is glad to be back and be finishing the year in this normal process of being in school.
Happy to not be connected to the computers 24/7, teaching their classes, answering questions. Everyone did such an amazing job of just innovating and figuring it out in such a quick period of time. So I'm glad to hear that they're doing really well with the transition back. Dan, thank you. Next question is, why are we riffing and cutting teachers by eliminating numbers of units per grade in some of the buildings, and now we have 25 students in a classroom after coming off a year of lost education and some of the lowest reading students we've ever had? I think that might be insider question there because I don't really understand what they're asking, but I'm assuming that you do, Dr. Motley?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Riffing is when we are reducing teachers or laying off teachers, and I was a little taken aback by this question when it came in because no decisions have been made about riffing or cutting classes. We're in the throes of staffing, and I think Dan mentioned that earlier at the top of the meeting. We are still evaluating class sizes and staffing. I will tell you, it's been a challenge again over the course of the past year. We had, for example, some parents who made a personal choice, which we respect as a school district, to keep their child home for an extra year and start them at age 6 because it might have been easier for childcare instead of a hybrid model. We're expecting our kindergarten numbers to be higher than in the past. Also, I want to say it was a week ago, maybe, Tim, we made a decision to actually survey those families who made another choice for their educational option over the course of last year, or this school year rather. And I decided, hey, let's reach out to those families and see if they're going to return. And so we can account for where those students will go if we have to increase staffing at a certain building or move them to another building. So those numbers are still very fluid. So I would say, to be direct, this information is inaccurate. I have shared with Dan, and I know we share the same position. We don't like riffing teachers. That's not what we want to do. We want programs where we can sustain employment, but we also realize we have a responsibility to be good stewards of our dollars that are given to us by our taxpayers. But it is way, way too early to really determine and finalize class size. It is a work in progress. And if you're wondering about when we'll really have more firm numbers, I would say more than likely around the end of May or early June. But quite frankly, our parents have until really the first day of school to enroll their children and beyond. So in some instances, it can be a moving target, but we're going to do our best to get it right. We're going to work with our Director of Human Resources. We're going to work with Dan and SEA leadership to make sure not only do we right size, but more importantly, we have the right number of staff and the right kind of staff to support our educational programming.
Can I also add to that? Yeah, I mean, obviously there's concern and people are watching and speculating from within teaching, ranks about class size and what's it going to look like, and certainly from any given position they are. But I will say that the piece that for me that has resonated so far as we've gone through the process. And I know, by the way, historically, I think we've added classes through the summer. I think that's been something that we've done as we've seen enrollment rise in certain places. We have done things historically. But I appreciate the deliberative place that we're at right now in recognition of not jumping the gun with a program or a thing or a this or the latest or whatever, fill in the blank, that we haven't fully vetted and scaffolded for the success of. I think that in the long run, if we're staffing based on really understanding our needs and making deliberate steps and being conscious about how we do that, we're going to end up 2, 3, 4 years down the line feeling good about what we've done. And it really, I think it probably is a challenge right now to figure out where we are. You mentioned, like, are these students coming back? Aren't they coming back? Understandably, kindergarten registration, it might not be on their radar like it's been in other years. So I know it's been a challenge, but I think I personally appreciate that we're not rushing into something that maybe we will, like, in months to come, be like, yeah, that was a rush, that was too quick, that really is not going to pan out. I think it's much better. I appreciate the deliberative way that we've been going about things, and thank you for doing that.
So it's hard not to have some hard, fast answers now, you're saying, but the patience you believe will pay off as you work through some of these issues and get people in the places they need to be.
Absolutely. I think that I think it's tough whether you're a teacher, when you have any connection to the district, when you feel like, I'm not so sure this is going to pan out, and then you find out a year later or two, you know what, that didn't pan out, that didn't work out. We missed a few things, and you certainly hear about it, as community members are saying things, why would you rush into that? I think that making the deliberative process that we are doing, and I really do appreciate that. I think it's a smart way to go. So, thank you.
All right, our next question. How much are we paying Chris Peterson to moderate this town hall? Hey, I made the questions.
You made the questions. I'm going to take that one, and thank you for the easiest question of the night. We are paying Chris nothing. I will say, as long as I've known Chris, which is a lot of years, she does so much for Sylvania schools. Whenever we ask her, she MCs, she's always there, she shows up, and she never charges us anything. I think maybe we might give you a plaque or something sometime. You name a room after you, I don't know, but let me just say, we do appreciate your support of our schools, and I know, having known you for so long, that you do that all over the community, donate your time. So thank you for giving some of it to us.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. So yes, the answer is no monetary pay, but I am a taxpayer in Sylvania, so I have a vested interest. And my daughter, Riley, had 12 wonderful years in Sylvania schools, and so this is important to me also. So thank you for that question. I'm not getting rich off this?
You're not. I'm sorry. The check is in the mail.
Check is in the mail. Got it. Okay. Is the new cell tower out at the back of the baseball diamond on Northview's property a done deal? Greg, is that you?
That's me. The answer is no, it's not. So it's still, there's a process that these things go through. There's a zoning process that's involved. So right now, the application is at the city of Sylvania. I believe it's going to city council here real soon. So the question is no, it's not. It still has to be approved by the city.
But to be fair, we should say we did vote on the cell phone tower to allow the process to move forward.
Correct.
Okay. And is that in response to you needed more bandwidth at Northview, or is this like...
I can answer that a little bit, having had kids at Northview and spent a lot of time there. The signal at Northview is not great. I know there's a dead zone. When I used to live out that way, I wouldn't even talk on the phone when I drove through Silica right there. So that is a real issue out there. I think it's a safety issue. I think we consider it a safety issue. And so I don't know, bandwidth, that's not really, but Tim,
I can
Veronica?
speak to it a little bit. I do understand it. The cell phone tower really isn't supporting the need of Wi-Fi per se in our building, but really it's our district working in partnership for our community in regards to dropping calls. It's a dead zone. It's a drop zone. You can be in the stands as a parent. I heard a parent say the other day, I try to get on my phone to play some games sometimes during the athletic event, and I can't even get a signal.
We're not going to tell you which parent.
We're not going to tell you which parent, though. Yeah. We won't mention that. But it really is just a zone from my
Was it Julie Hoffman?
I don't have any kids there anymore, so no. A little bit.
But I think we're trying to really meet a community need. And will it benefit some of the students at Northview? I'm sure, as they're on their cell phones too. But really, it's bigger than our schools. It's really about supporting the needs of our community, although it is a safety measure for us, because if there was an issue, and I believe there may have been an issue a year or so ago prior to my arrival, that there was an incident, and actually there was difficulty getting out to, I guess, the emergency response folks, first responders, because we don't have adequate cell phone service in that area. Hence, we want to do what's best to keep the safety and safe and well-being of our students number one. That's our number one priority, but also benefit the community as well.
Good. Okay, for children who qualify for reading intervention and have not received services when remote, will they be getting first enrollment or extra help in summer services? We just heard a little plan, a presentation on the plan for summer and the summer swing as well. So I don't know, Tim or Dr. Motley.
I can take this one.
Sure, I'll chime in.
You can chime in, sir. Thank you. The answer is yes. I think the reason we took the approach of a multi-criteria approach for our summer swing program is because we know that the loss of instruction had a different impact on different children in different ways. We also recognize that even prior to the shutdown of schools, that some children were already behind. And so we're doing our best to prioritize the needs of our children. I know Alex and Karen spoke to starting with data, looking at a variety of data, not just testing data, but we also wanted the quantifiable data and the qualifiable data. In other words, our teachers even had input. How did they rank the children? Now, of course, we probably won't be able to get everybody in the program that we would like to have, but we did want to make sure that we started with those students who would most benefit because they were further behind. We will have a wait list that will be in place, so if folks say we're not going to be able to participate because we're going on vacation, or my child's just fatigued of school, we're just going to take a break this summer, we're going to have opportunities for additional children to join the program, but there is a priority list. Is there anything else you can think of, Tim?
I think that sums it up.
Okay.
But just going to that list, we're going to have a capacity limit. Invitations will go out, and I know that they just gave this presentation, but it's going to be active. If a parent declines it, we're going right to that second list and making that invitation almost immediately. I know Alex and Karen have that lined up. So we're optimistic about, connecting with those students who need those services this summer.
Awesome, thank you. The CDC just came out with a study that says the virus doesn't live on surfaces. When can we cut back on the chemicals?
I just received this information the other day, and it's pretty exciting to hear that, because it's evidence and more evidence that we're kind of getting through to the other side, and we're learning more and more about the virus every day. But most importantly, we will continue to work with our Toledo-Lucas County Health Department in regards to what mitigation strategies we have to continue to use and what mitigation strategies we can pull back on. For example, sanitizing or using chemicals in our classroom to make sure that they are clean. So this is an area we will seek additional guidance on and work with Toledo-Lucas County Health Department and gather their input and direction.
Next question, why are we still allowing students to attend school every day when there are still children getting tested? I have a situation that got an email that my child came in contact with someone that had COVID. I have to wait for an administrative, or I guess the health department, to contact me. I'm beginning to get emails almost daily about students testing. I think the students came back too soon, and then we should have tried again next school year. They could have finished the school year online. They've been doing it for this long, so why are we allowing students to go to school every day with the risk of COVID?
I appreciate this parent's perspective, and thank you for providing your opinion and advocating for your position about the direction we took to bring our students back to school. And to be honest, this is a tough question, and I understand the concern. I am going to assume this is probably a high school parent. I will tell you we have had some instances of exposure to COVID at our high schools. More than likely and more oftentimes than not, we still have some students who may not be making the best choices and are contracting the virus outside of the school environment. We have evidence and we're watching our own data. Schools are not COVID spreaders. We're not super spreaders as a building or an organization. Typically, it's an event or an exposure that a child has had outside of the school, and then they come to school, and then we take the precautionary steps to make sure that we contact trace and have students isolate or quarantine. To that end, being in high school, the way the letters are generated, we do contact tracing for every class that child is in. So if there is a child that may be in contact with a child that tested positive and you have 4 classes with that one student, and you sit next to that student for those 4 classes, the way the software generates the letters, you may get 4 letters. But quite frankly, it's only because of one exposure. And so to be honest, the software programs aren't really COVID friendly for communicating. And so we're doing our best, and I asked our administrative team, is there a way to get around this? Because as a parent, if I'm getting 3 letters in one day, I think it's realistic to assume that's 3 separate cases. And more than likely, it's not. It's one case, but your child may share 3 classes with the same student and sit within close proximity or have been engaging with that student. So I understand how it would cause a sense of concern and perhaps would like a sense of maybe we came back too soon, because I think it elevates the concern. But quite frankly, please know we're doing the best we can to keep our students safe. And I rather have a parent have too much conversation or communication about a potential contact than none at all.
Yeah. I think we're finding all the way around, whether it's signing up for vaccines or letting people know that they've had a contact with someone, that maybe the software programs haven't been the easiest to use throughout. Next question is, would the high schools consider an A-B hybrid schedule in the future for juniors and seniors? Some kids do better on a hybrid schedule rather than being in class every day or completely virtual.
I could take this one. I think I haven't heard, as a high school teacher, I haven't heard anything about maybe investigating that possibility. I will say, being back 5 days a week, versus being on the hybrid schedule, I appreciate that every student has a different way of learning and things that are going to help students thrive. In general, and by overwhelming majority, I would say students thrive by the 5 day a week. As a teacher, watching students have some difficulties managing their time because of the hybrid schedule, or just not being as connected, not being in the routine, and it was difficult for, I would say, the majority of the students. I think that the student success for most students comes from the 5 day a week, being there 5 days a week, not being on a hybrid schedule. And I think that too, in terms of, I was doing some teaching where I would have half my students in the class while I was doing streaming to the other half of the students. I think the residual negative effect has been, our challenge has been getting kids to engage in class. They were passive learners because they're learning online, and it's difficult to do that. And so I think, given all in all, I think that from a teaching perspective, I think it would be very tough if we took on a permanent hybrid schedule for those high school seniors and juniors.
All right, kind of along those same lines, is there any chance Sylvania schools would adopt a 4-day school week? Our family found a distinct advantage having an intervention day and a day to get things done, so we were more focused for the other 4 days. Tim?
Yeah, good question, and it looks like that may be from a parent, but ironically, I was I was a part of the calendar committee for creating the district calendars for the next 2 years and working with teachers and administrators as well as OPSE members on that committee. That was a question that was brought up amongst staff. I think families and teachers, there was some benefit to having that day, and I'm not going to call it a day off because I know it wasn't used as a day off, at least from an educational perspective. It was used for intervention and enrichment by teachers. Every Friday is when we used it this year. If we would decide to go that route, we do have Ohio Department of Education expectations and mandates put forth. Those switched to hours rather than days a handful of years ago. But if we took 36 days out of the school year for a day a week, we're going to have to either do one of two things. We're going to have to extend our school day hourly each day, or extend the school year if we decided to go 4 days a week. So the simple answer is we're going to continue with a 5-day-a-week schedule.
Yeah. And a lot of that, those hours, I mean, you're mandated to do that.
Absolutely.
By the state of Ohio, yeah. Will they wait to close sign-ups till the end of the school year, like some students? My daughter getting credit and passing geometry is based on her fourth quarter grade and exam, so how can I sign her up not knowing if she has passed or failed yet? Also, is this a free program? Should it be due to the lack of education through the school year?
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about the difference between the summer swing that was presented at the beginning of this program, as well as our summer school program, which is technically our Edgenuity credit recovery program for our high school students. Each year we do extend that deadline for those students who may have not passed the third or fourth, or a combination of those, or a combination that equivalates to the semester. You know, our counselors do leave that window open through the first month of June to see if those students do need to or have the opportunity to take the credit recovery for the class they may have failed second semester. I think it's also important to remember, I think this parent may have mentioned third and fourth quarter as well as the exam grade. We do not have exams this year. So just to pass that along, not to get too specific with the parent, but it is going to be strictly a combination of third and fourth quarter grades. We're not having end of year exams just to give it an additional week of instructional delivery for our teachers in the classroom. And I think the last part of that question was, is that program free? Referring back to the summer swing presentation, if the student is recommended for the summer swing program and also has some credit deficient areas that they need to take the credit recovery courses as well, and they fulfill the obligations for both of those, there would be some reimbursement allotted back to those families. But they would have to fall within both of those categories, as well as follow the contract that will be out in order to get that.
All right, Tim, we're going to keep you in the hot seat and ask you, can you make a pledge to not teach critical race theory?
You know, I'll be honest with you. I did see the questions ahead of time, just being candid with everybody on here, and I had to do a little research on what critical race theory is, and I was a little alarmed by what I found. And my interpretation is that critical race theorists hold the law that legal institutions in the United States function to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between whites and non-whites, specifically African Americans. That's alarming, I think, to hear that. Not to think that is alarming when I hear that. I think it's a good question that I can stand by, and I know talking with Dr. Motley, is I'll speak for everybody up here, is no, we will not teach that. That is not something we're going to bring into our schools or into our public institutions here in Sylvania schools. I think more importantly, on the other end of that question, and I know we have focused, and the board knows this, and Dr. Motley, Dan knows this, I mean, everybody knows, we have focused the past year on how to get through the pandemic. How can we educate students? How can we continue instruction through this pandemic? What can we do? Switching colors, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a whole nother realm of issues that we are taking on in this country right now that we're not going to drop the ball with, that we may have not focused on at the same level, but we do focus on the same level. I don't think we have communicated it as much the past year because of the pandemic. We work very closely with our Director of Diversity, Mr. Chet Trail. He was at a staff meeting today at one of our high schools giving a presentation to staff. We will continue to grow and teach and focus on cultural competency and differences that all of our students and families have in this community, in this district, and continue to accept and be a part of those differences, even though they not be exactly similar to what we may believe in. So, long answer, interesting question, an important question, but hopefully that makes sense on our direction as a district moving forward with that.
Okay.
And
We'll
I
check
can-
back with you in a couple of forums from now and see how you guys are doing on, looking into some of those other things. You were going to say
I was
something,
going to say,
Dan.
from the trenches, I have not heard this come up as anything of an issue among teachers. There's a degree of academic freedom that teachers have to bring certain things in, to choose some novels they teach, or to accent a certain this or that as they go through the curriculum. But I have not heard anything about this as a specific thing that is being considered for any teacher to bring into their class. Just a practical matter.
I had not heard of it before now either. So we'll keep just asking you about how the curriculum is moving forward as we go through the next several months. Next question is, why weren't the Arbor Hills parents notified in a timely manner of the unsafe situation that occurred with a student with a gun at the school until they were notified around 9 p.m. that parents have found out about the situation and were not going to be sending their kids to school the next day? Ironically, after they were notified, an email came out to parents 15 minutes later. A more transparent, proactive approach would be appreciated.
Yeah, for the record, there was never a gun at Arbor Hills Junior High School. There was never a gun in any of our buildings on that day. If that did happen, there would be a press release. Information would be communicated to our families. I do think it's important to explain that situation. That was a case where a student at Arbor Hills did have a picture taken with a weapon outside of school hours. That picture was then shared with another student in the building a few days later that week. That student, rightfully so, took it immediately to the teacher. The teacher turned it into the administration. The administration handled it spot on from my perspective. They contacted township police, even though it wasn't an internal situation that happened in the building. It happened outside of our schools. We still focus on the safety and well-being of all of our students in and out of the building. Township police was involved, and investigation was had taken place, and parents who were involved directly were communicated with. The issue with the situation was, in the realm of social media, that picture was shared on social media with some incorrect information that stated that it was in school, hence this question. Nothing was done about it. The assistant principal didn't do anything about it. Some statements that were untrue. So working with the Arbor Hills administration, we decided to address not the situation that happened in school so much as to the incorrect information that took place on social media. It kind of gives some facts. We couldn't explain everything because it was still an investigatory piece, but we felt it was important that the Arbor Hills families who may have seen or heard about this through social media got the accurate information.
What are you going to do for the Sala students that may have fallen behind? How will you make it up to them since they weren't permitted to come back to school even when they requested it? Other districts have given families the option to return even if they have been learning remotely, but Sylvania has not. Why couldn't the effort be made for the good of the children? It is my understanding that many families wanted their children to return to school since things have improved. Sylvania families have held our schools to a higher standard, but now feel they have failed us. Can you start, Dr. Motley, by just explaining what the acronym SALA is?
Yes, and I am going to ask Tim because it's, I don't know, we've called it Sylvania Alternative Learning Academy.
Sylvania Alternative Learning Academy. It's
I
been
was
a while
close.
since we've actually
Said it out loud.
called
We
it
just
out.
feel like
We called it Sala.
we all had pieces and parts of it. Thanks, team.
We knew the Sylvania. We got the Sylvania.
We got
yes.
the Sylvania right. But it is our online platform for our parents who felt apprehensive about bringing their children back to school under the conditions that we were operating, and also with the fluidity of the learning plans, albeit red remote or yellow hybrid, and many parents opted to keep their children at home. The other piece about Sala is that we had an opportunity for those parents to have a change of heart at semester, so they didn't have to commit for the whole year, but we did communicate and have them commit to staying with the program for at least a semester term. If they wanted to stay second semester, they had an option. The understanding was they had to stay for the entire second semester. Also, if they wanted to jump back in because they felt conditions were improving, and for example, we were able to bring our elementary students back 4 days a week right at the beginning of second semester. If parents felt so inclined, they had that opportunity. So we did afford our parents that, and I think what happened in some cases, parents became more comfortable and saw that Sylvania Schools was doing a great job in protecting our students and keeping them safe, and with our mitigation strategies. In some instances, we did have parents request to have their children come back to school in March, well after the deadline. And it's tough to tell a parent no. We want our children in our classrooms. It's tough. However, we also recognize that it would have an impact on our class sizes. They would go up quite significantly, which is why we asked parents to have or make a commitment so we could account for that. If we needed to add a teacher or add a paraprofessional to support those classes. So hence the commitment, and I wish we could take all the students back that expressed an interest in March or early April, but unfortunately we had some limiting conditions that kept us from doing that. But we welcome those families back in the fall if they choose to do so, and they too will be able to participate in the summer swing program because we recognize those students may too have not had an opportunity to maximize learning, and so they will also be part of the invitation process.
Next question is, why isn't there better security at Highland Elementary? I went to pick up my son and the office attendant didn't ask for an ID or who I was, just called the classroom and said his family was here to pick him up. I had his aunt pick him up once and the office staff didn't ask for an ID nor who she was either. This is not acceptable, not safe at all. Kids just rush out of school to many waiting parents, no organization. What do you say about that, Tim?
Yeah, the office personnel at all buildings are required and should ask for identification for a parent or guardian or anybody on the pickup list. Match that with the power school emergency contacts or guardian information so that accurate parents and guardians are picking up their students. I will follow up with Highland as well as a reminder to all buildings about that. That's something that should be followed. It is a little hectic at dismissal, specifically in our elementary buildings. A couple things we do have in place there is that we do have the transportation registration, so those students who aren't registered for transportation in the PM, those teachers in the buildings know that they are walkers or the parents are going to pick them up. If you're generally somebody who rides the bus home in the PM, we do continue to ask parents to turn in a letter. I'm going to be picking Johnny up from school at the end of the day today. And then we do request that parents are either in the parking lot or a lot of our buildings also, they have the parents walk right up on the foyer area outside the building. We always have staff members out there just to kind of monitor that, make sure students are willingly going with, who is there to pick them up. But that is a process we have in place, and we'll continue to work on that and communicate with our buildings, specifically with the one about the identification.
Can I ask him a question? Mm-hmm. I don't mean to blindside you. Don't we have the system, the security system to get in? So isn't it possible that parent had checked in with their ID?
Yeah, we do have the Raptor system to get into the buildings, but generally that's just kind of the visit to drop something off just to make sure they pass those background checks. When it comes to actually picking up a child from school, they should present the ID to the secretary.
Oh, yeah, I agree. You should.
Yes, but there still is a Raptor system.
Right, the Raptor to get into the office.
To get into the building, to get into the office, yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, to get in there, that person already had gone through one level of security, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
It wasn't even there when I had my kid.
It wasn't there when my kids were there, but I know even as a board member, if I go in, I had to register with that Raptor system and put my ID. I remember the first time I was like, wait, you know who I am? Do you have to do it?
Yeah. And that's another interesting thing, right? These people are sharp. They know who people are sometimes. I mean, I was in that building a lot. If they're asking me for my ID every day, it might seem a little silly, but it's the protocol, so we're going to follow it. Okay, so we're improving on that is the answer there. Why can't the superintendent update everyone via written medium? We would prefer to simply read the update as opposed to having to watch a video.
I would hope that everybody would love to see my face on TV. I had to go with the joke. I thought about it, but anyway. I appreciate the feedback. That's very good feedback. And, I like to communicate with a variety of mediums, albeit written, video. I don't know. I might have to do a song and a dance in the future. I don't know. But I think it's important that we use a variety of ways to communicate with all of our stakeholders. I've been working with our communications director, Amy Addington, about how we can reinstate newsletters to our community members, especially those community members who aren't in our schools as much as they used to be, and reaching out to our alumni. Although I'm not the most comfortable doing videos, I am pushing myself to make sure that it's a quick way to get a lot of information out to families. Steve makes me look great. Thank you, Steve, for filming those. I really appreciate your support. But I will continue to use a variety of ways. If it's a statement, if it's an email, if it's a video, sometimes I tweet. We also use our Facebook page and our district website. I just think it's important to communicate with people in many different ways as possible.
Yeah. And then just from a kind of marketing and communication standpoint, when you're a new person, it's kind of nice to see your face and get to know you a little bit, even if it is just through video, because we have been away from the buildings for so long, right? So I can understand that there might be people pressing you to do the videos too, because they want people to get to know you, Dr. Motley. I have a question about how do you sign your child up for summer school?
I think, Tim, you want to take this one?
This is a big, long question.
Okay.
I will read it. The junior high and high school buildings have emotional disturbance units for our students in need of intense behavior interventions, and there are plans to bring back the ED at the elementary level. For some students, violence toward their teacher and teacher aides is a daily occurrence, despite the teachers. I'm so sorry. This is two different questions.
Go ahead and keep going, because I'll take them both.
Okay.
Yes.
So despite the teachers' best efforts to mitigate, for the students who are witness to this, it can also be traumatizing. So they're asking about students the schools having appropriate resources and teachers available to handle all of those ED students.
Sure. I'll start with that first question, is how do you register for summer school? Summer school, different than the summer swing program. Our summer school registrations are open right now for the summer PE that's being offered, as well as the Edgenuity credit recovery courses. You can contact Tanya Eitner in the teaching and learning department, and she can get you registered. I know Mr. Swaggerty is going to be the principal of that summer school this summer. He did send some electronic flyers out and things of that nature where you can register virtually for that as well. And then the summer swing program, as Alex and Karen discussed, those invitations should be coming out very soon, within the next day or so. By the end of this week, I would assume those initial invitations will be coming out. Going back to the question about our emotional disturbance kids and how those are handled in our elementary classrooms, I think that was the specifics of that question. Our students with ED behaviors are engaged in our moderate to intense classrooms. All of our elementary buildings do have a moderate to intense unit currently. Ironically, we just went through an audit through our special ed program. I don't want to say just went through. It's been about a year-long process that was extended with COVID. And we actually just wrapped that up last week working with our elementary principals. And one of the main pieces was focusing on the feedback to support students in the moderate to intense classrooms, and we do have a goal and a plan to move forward with adding more of those units in our elementaries next year to support the reasons the reasons that were addressed in the question.
Okay. So I hope that answered your question. Next, and I know we're about 7:15 right now. We have just a couple more questions, so I'm just going to try to power through them so nobody feels left out here tonight, okay? Is there an educational program on the U.S. Constitution on September 17th? Dr. Motley?
Yes. I thought that was quick enough. No. Anyway, no, this is September 17th is actually known as Constitution Day. And actually, in Ohio Revised Code, all school districts are required to provide instruction on the U.S. Constitution in recognition of this specific day. In Sylvania, we allow teachers to elect the materials that they would like to use. It may look different from kindergarten through high school, but it is definitely a recognized day, and we do follow the Ohio Revised Code, and it's an important day for our nation. So I'm pleased to say that we do follow through in instructing on the Constitution Day.
Greg, there is a question about why is it that most of the school board members are lawyers?
So as one of the non-lawyer board members, I'll answer that. It's an interesting question. So I guess I'll just kind of go case by case. Julie, for example, she was elected, so she chose to run, and the public elected her, so that's how she ended up on the board. And then,
I like that answer, Greg.
You like that?
I do.
And then speaking to, obviously Kim and Tammy were both appointed recently. I just kind of speak from my perspective from our process. So we went through a process with both of those appointments. We took applications, we reviewed them, we interviewed a few of the candidates, and then we, as a board, we talked and chose the person that we felt was best qualified, was offered skills that we felt like we needed. And for me personally, their profession didn't really play into the decision. So it just kind of happened that way, to be honest with you. There was no intention of, putting all attorneys on the board. So from my perspective, that's kind of how it came to be.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would also say we did actually talk about, do we want this many attorneys on the board? And we thought these are the right people if we don't look at their, their careers, and we didn't want to penalize somebody for what they chose to do when we felt they were the right. I remember you and I having that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just lucky, I guess, is the answer, right? That we
That's the
have 3 lawyers on the board. Okay, I would like to know how in a pandemic, any situation, you as a school district can put any kid's safety at greater risk than other kids. How do you stay well when hybrid? Okay, guys, trying to get through this here. The hybrid students only went 2 days a week, but then you make special needs go back 4 days a week. And special needs kids have to go 4 days a week. It's not safe for all kids to go 4 days. If it's not safe for all kids to go 4 days a week, then why are the special ed kids going 4 days a week?
I understand that concern, and it really is perspective. And our special education students, well, let me begin by saying student safety is always our number one concern. We never want to put a child or children in harm's way. However, students with special needs do have specific requirements by law that we must follow, and that's called FAPE. And FAPE is a free and appropriate education. And for students that have special needs, FAPE is tied to an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. We did have some students in our buildings that attended school 4 days a week. They were students that were typically had multiple disabilities that were what we would refer to as low incident but high need. That could be students that are non-ambulatory, nonverbal, maybe on a feeding tube, maybe autistic, or a combination of all of those diagnoses. And as a result, we provided our parents who have children with special needs an option to have their child attend school 2 or 4 days a week. We gave them that option because if we didn't provide FAPE, we would be in violation of the law. So although it may seem ironic that our children were in school, they were typically serviced or had their services in a resource room, which allowed them to function in their own pod, which we have told people to do, is create your own small pod so you can stay safe from the virus. And that's what we did. But most importantly, it was a parent decision along with the IEP team. And if parents felt comfortable and we could provide that support for the continued growth of those students who are the most involved, we were happy to do so.
Next question, I would like to know if there's a limit on days missed for school during this pandemic school year.
The answer is no. I will say under the pandemic, Governor DeWine, as well as the Ohio Department of Education, basically gave us a waiver for all school districts across the state this year in regards to the number of required days and required hours. The good news is in districts like Sylvania and many others in the state, we continue to provide instruction on a daily basis, although it looked a little different on some days if we were red or yellow, remote or hybrid. But this year, we kind of got a pass due to the pandemic and the fluidity of the virus. So we're looking forward to, hopefully, the goal is to be 5 days a week next year and going back to a more typical school calendar.
How much money do you get per child from the state, and is it the same amount for special needs kids as it is for the other students? And if not, how much for the other students and how much for special needs do you receive?
In 2020, the state per pupil funding was approximately $1,900 per typical students. The state does support students differently if those students do have special needs, and it's a weighted formula based on the identification or category of that student. So for example, if we have a child that has autism, the state may give us more money for that child compared to a child that may have a specific learning disability. But they do use a weighted formula as they allocate the funds to our district.
Next question is, when will we know who, specifically the teacher's name and background, will be educating our children for summer classes, before or after we decide if they will attend?
Yeah, our process with that is we want to get commitment first from families to see how many teachers we need to hire for the program. I think if we did it the other way around, we could not hire enough, have too many, and then tell those individuals, oh, sorry, we don't have enough students enrolled in the program. So as I explained, that enrollment piece or those invitations are going to be going out soon. Once we have those numbers, those solid numbers, we'll go ahead and staff those and send the bid process out for those teachers to be involved with it, and then they'll find out who those teachers are. I will say Alex and Karen both, you know, we're not going to throw a sophomore geometry teacher down to teach kindergarten. You know, we're going to keep those, you know, those bands together and keep them within their licensure for those grade levels.
Their areas of expertise.
Absolutely.
Okay. Last question, and this will go to Greg and Julie. Why doesn't the Board of Education respond to public participation?
Sure, I'll start.
I'm not really sure what that means.
Okay, I think I understand it. We get this, I've heard this question before.
Okay.
So we have two opportunities for public participation at any board meeting. The first one is for items that are on our agenda. So before we vote on them, if you know, community members want to give us extra information, something we need to think about, they can have a chance to address us at that point. And at the end of the meeting, we have an opportunity for public participation for items not on the agenda. So if there's something they think, other information they want to bring to us, they want to, you know, say, hey, good job on this, or not such a great job on this, or whatever they want to come talk to us about. We can ask clarifying questions, but we don't get into a back and forth. I mean, I don't think you see that in any sort of political, I mean, you're not going to go speak to Congress and they're going to go back and forth with you. What we do if somebody brings a concern to us at that time is, you know, oftentimes we'll say, hey, Mr. Zaroff is going to get in touch with you, or, you know, the appropriate person will get back with them with the answer they're seeking or the information they need. But we just generally, we don't want to get into a back and forth because, you know, we don't know what you're coming to talk to us about, and we might not have the information right in that moment, and we want to give accurate, correct information, so we make sure that people coming with concerns, it does get addressed, maybe not by us right then, but we do, usually Tim gets those.
And just want to make sure they're put in touch with the right person to
Yes.
actually answer the needs that they're asking.
Or else I just have them talk to Greg later.
Well, that is the last question. And look, we did it under 90 minutes, so I'm going to consider this a very successful Facebook Live session here today with all of you. Thank you so much for all of the thoughtful questions. I hope you feel that you got the answers that you needed. If not, you have people up here who are very responsive to phone calls and emails. Don't hesitate to reach out to them directly. You can find them all, how to get in touch with them on the website. And just want to thank all of you. I know some of the questions are very tough to hear and to answer, and so we really appreciate all of you being here tonight and being willing to face the music.
Chris, if I may make one statement, I misspoke earlier about our platform in the district, and I want to correct it.
Okay.
We are an HP district, Hewlett Packard. So I want to make sure for our tech folks that I got that right, because I felt the stares glaring over here. So thank you, but we are an HP district, not a Dell.
Okay.
Okay.
Tim checks.
Tim is the advertisement right there with the HP on the back of the computer. HP, all right, we are HP district in Sylvania schools and have the Chromebooks for all
Yes,
the
we
kids.
do.
Okay. So thank you. Please feel free to continue to submit your questions. From time to time, we'll be doing these question and answer sessions just so you are able to see what's up with the district. Thanks for being with us tonight, and thanks all of you again. Thanks to our video crew for keeping us straight here tonight. We appreciate you. We'll see you again.